Today we have this teeny tiny Trek rim brake bike in for a resurrection service. So the owner of this, young mum, been off for a few years, having kids and bringing up a family, and mostly been riding a bike with a taggle on. Now she wants to get this out of the shed and get it resurrected so she can get out and enjoy it again. It's in pretty good condition apart from layers of dust and cobwebs, but it's not actually that rusty, so I'm pretty hopeful. Now this video is going to be really useful for any of you buying a second-hand bike or doing something similar. What are the processes that we're going to go through? There's some things on here just because of the age that we're going to replace. Things like the tyres have perished, inner tubes, brakes, cables that we're not sure about. We want to make sure that we're going to mitigate any risk of failure and also make sure this comes back looking as good as new. All right, let's get into it. And just for speed, this is quite satisfying. We're just going to go through and cut all the cables. First thing I want to do is measure it, so I'm just going to be using chain checker here, and this looks really good. So the 0.75 stretch doesn't fit in, the 0.5 doesn't fit in either, so this could just get a really good clean. We should be good to reuse that. So the rear mech has got really sticky. It's like you can almost feel the friction in some of this, so this needs a really good service, but other than that, it's in good condition. I should say, little order of operations thing, and that is if you've got a thread fit bottom bracket, I would normally take the cranks off and do the bottom bracket with all the wheels and everything on, because then you can get it on the floor. And if you really need to crank on like a big lever to try and get it undone, you've got the support of the whole bike. This is press fit, so I don't imagine any sort of problems. That's why I'm doing it in this order. This is probably as far as I'll take this apart, unless on this visual inspection I'm about to do saw any sort of signs of wear or corrosion that gave me some sort of cause for concern. This all looks actually very clean, so there's no need to disturb any of this. Now, oh, actually, interesting. Good old BB90. It just came out in my hand. It's always a good sign. I was about to say, I don't feel proud to use this tool, but because of this obnoxious bearing shield, I couldn't get a decent puller behind it, but in the process of just pushing this in, the non-drive side just came out in my hand, didn't even need a tap. Didn't catch that? This is the tool that we use. This has got a nice sharp edge so that we can get properly behind the bearing. Right now, I'm going to do a cursory inspection, but really I want to save my inspection so I know that everything's clean. But so far, all looks good. There's a few little bits of like galvanic corrosion creeping in where the aluminium is bonded into the carbon. Hopefully that's not gone too deep and we can just clean that off. So this is called a Rozone parts washer, and hopefully going to get a new one of these soon. When we built this new workshop, more on that coming, we're going to get a much bigger parts washer with like 2 cleaning stations, but for now this will do. So this is, we've not seen one of these before. It's like a big tank of this sort of environmentally friendly enzyme that's really kind on our aluminium components, and it captures all the grease in this like filter, and we just change the filter and we change out the fluid and stuff. just using a wet chain lube. I'm going to try and get into all these little pivots. We'll just put in a small drop of oil. So with these, there's actually like a little roller you can see in here. So this is the part that we need to make sure we get some oil into. So with the chain, what I'm going to do is give it a quick spray of GT85 and we'll come back to this a bit later. This is just a water dispersant because I don't want it to go rusty. So right now the frame is clean, all the components are clean and a basic service done to them. The chain is just drying off. While all that's going on, it's time to start looking at the wheels. Now these are a hand-built set of wheels. They've got Chris King hubs. I'm not quite sure the brand of the rim just yet, but we really need to give this a bit of TLC. Look at all those cobwebs. I am really in two minds with these tyres. Normally, because of the age, I would sort of just replace them, but I really can't see any evidence of that, like rubber perishing, and can't really see any sort of damage. I think we might keep these. Oh, we have a problem. That's not cool. That's not supposed to happen. Before we start taking these apart, I think these best go in the parts washer, a bit of a clean, so it's just easier to work on. Okay, where are we? Just quick recap. So all of our parts are clean, laid out, we've gone through, we've collected all the bits together we need, apart from a few. So the Chris King hub has turned into a bit of an epic, if you like, so I had to go and get the schematics and order a few spare parts. So if you've never seen one of these before, this is like the little ring drive just here. So what's happening is this bit here is just getting caught, and what's rather than always engaging, it's just slipping here. So what I've decided to do is order a new one of these ring drives, and we'll go through the file and just make sure that everything's really, really clean so that this can move freely. So I think we'll do some more Chris King stuff in another video. Another time, so we've got a few parts to wait on there. Found all our bearings, done everything else. The cranks were on the recall, so they've gone back to Shimano. It's pretty much what we do with all our cranks now that we get through that Shimano recall. We don't bother just inspect them, we just ship them back. It seems to be the industry norm on all the bike forums, sort of shop mechanic forums that we follow. They all just say, just ship them back, get a new set. But what I want to do is get this bike back together again, sort of get it back on its wheels, and hopefully talk you through the order of operations that we go through to try and just get this built as effectively and cleanly as possible. Right, we're going to start with headset. Can I just throw out a little bit of love for the quality of this fork? This is untouched from factory, beautifully well made, super smooth. Like, whatever mechanic cut that did an absolutely cracking job. The way I like to do this is to avoid getting grease everywhere, is to get some grease on this surface, get your bearing on, and some grease on this surface. Remember, it doesn't need to be loads, which is why the grease applicators are so good. And then some grease up on this surface. Remember, this is just for corrosion resistance. Bearing can go in. And then a little bit of grease on that surface. And that way, we've got all our grease in place. Nothing on my hands at all. So fork goes through, and if you're careful, you won't knock the bearing out that you've just put in. Just going to grab a rag and make sure this surface here is dry, because I don't want any lubricant on a surface that I'm about to clamp. One thing I do like to do is just get this compression bung here. One, I just want to check it for corrosion. That all looks very good, but more to the point, I just want to get some grease on these threads. So when you put these in, put some pressure on it in this direction, because you want to make sure it sits completely flush. So I'm just going to put a little bit of pressure in so I know that I've got the grip. Don't bring it up to torque just yet. Make sure you get the actual stem on first. If you bring that up to 9 Newton meters now, it's going to expand everything. So put this on first. Again, make sure that's clean and free of any debris. And then torque wrench on there. Again, this is just stem cap bolt, just a little bit of construction grease on there. And for now, I'm just going to nip that bolt up, because this will be done when all the wheels are on. It's almost the very last thing we do when the bike's finished. So for now, that can just sit like that. I like to keep the bike a little bit positioned on the slope so that this aren't going to just knock around and bang into the frame here. If you can't do that, then you can get little straps. Right, we need to run some cables. What I could do is run this on the same side. And if I did that, then you'd always get a bit of cable rub here on the head tube. Or we could run the cable on this side. And this is really cool because one, it doesn't rub your frame at all, and you get good cable runs. But the problem is, it does mean that to get the rear gears over to the rear derailleur, that the cables need to cross on the inside of the down tube. That's how I personally like to do it. If you've got external cables, you can create an unsightly cross underneath and the two cables can rub. Now, I've never known a cable to snap there or cause any sort of friction. And I always think that the benefits of having it not rub your frame and you get a nice smooth cable run here outweighs the con of having the cables cross on the inside of the frame. But this is a contentious issue, so please get down in the comments and let me know what you prefer. Before you go too much further with this, just make sure that you've got nice smooth running cables. I'm just pulling on this cable and clicking through the gears, and any sort of friction or kinking that's going to come up will show up. Job is the bottom bracket. So what I've done is I've got the internal micrometer. You guys love a bit of this. Now these bearings should be a 36mm bearing. So what I want to do is I want to install the slightly oversized BIC ones. So I want to make sure that both sides are going to cope with that. So here on the drive side, we are slightly over. We're almost at 36.01 or something. So that's probably about right actually for a normal bearing. But over here on the non-drive side, which we knew was bad, 36.08. So we know that this side is the troublesome side. Now there's these little plastic sheath that can go on the inside first, like a little bit of weatherproofing. So to install these, I want to clean everything with a bit of IPA first, make sure I'm on a completely clean surfaces. You just keep cleaning until nothing black comes off on your cloth. And I'm actually going to use a very light retaining compound, in which case it's the Delta 22, like a medium strength, but it's actually quite light. Rear mech, so this has been dried, lubricated, and now I'm just going to do my last inspection before I install it. I want to make sure the threads here are okay, our barrel adjuster works and that's lubricated, and all this is functioning as it should. So we need some new inner tubes, get these wheels on the best we can while we're waiting for Chris King parts to come, and we're about done. Doing this is pull this really tight, clamp this to the wheel as tight as you can, pull everything really, really tight, like you're locking the brakes off, tighten the cable clamp bolt down, and then give the lever a right good squeeze, and any cable tension that's there will be taken out. Sadly, that's as far as we can go today. We're going to wait for some parts. We've got the Shimano cranks to come, Chris King ratchet drive to come, and then we can get this finished off. Here we go, the resurrection is complete. Well, almost complete. We're still waiting for the Shimano crank recall to come back, but doesn't it look great? Some new cables, some new bar tape, a really thorough inspection, make sure all the bearings are in great condition. Found that fault with the Chris King hub, fix that. Right, let's figure out how much this cost. Okay, the bit you've all been waiting for, how much does it all cost? Well, this bike was booked in for our full rebuild service. So we have a set of guaranteed labour rates. Some bike shops call it bronze, silver, gold, or 1, 2, or 3, whatever. We just try and be a bit more prescriptive and say this is a full rebuild service. The key bit of information here is the word service. Sometimes we win, sometimes we lose. The idea is that we offer this is our labour rate completely capped. Sometimes it's a pretty straightforward job, and sometimes we have little curveball jobs in there, like the Chris King hub in this one. But what you essentially will get is a complete strip down, a clean of all the components, and then a rebuild with anything we need to put it right. Now, normally we'd go ahead and just replace any sort of consumable, so brake pads, tyres, inner tubes, that sort of thing. We would normally just get on and do. Sorry. Anything beyond that, we would normally ring up and get authorisation from the customer before we went ahead and ordered any parts. Now, in order to try and head off any sort of comments about internal cable routing, my personal opinion on this is that nowadays most mechanics are well practiced enough with internal cable routing, and also the brands have made it significantly easier. I don't really feel there's any sort of need to upcharge for internal cable routing. But if you do have internal cable routing on your bike, I think it's definitely worth going for this service because it's significantly easier to take everything apart under your brake hoses and get access to those headset bearings and then put everything back together again rather than trying to manipulate your way around it. I think the labour costs just add up unless you go for the full package where you can just get things done. The only thing to bear in mind, if you do have a disc brake bike, we did make a video on that earlier and I'll link it down in the description, is that we sometimes have to disconnect your brake hoses to feed it through your headset, and if your brake hoses aren't long enough, we might need to cut them and we might need to replace them if they are then not long enough. The other thing worth mentioning is that we would charge more for repair work, and sometimes it can be a bit of a grey area about what is service work and what is repair work. For our clarity, repairing a broken spoke would be classed as an additional charge for a repair, in the same way that facing a brake or reaming a bottom bracket might constitute a repair rather than a service. So you might see an extra upcharge for that as well. This particular job was pretty straightforward. It was a straight £160 for the service. We took that little service hit on the Chris King hub. The only thing extra on there are those Chris King parts, which came to 90 quid for the drive unit and about 16 quid for the additional seals, which is definitely worth doing while we're in there servicing all the bearings. And then of course just the standard cables, inner tubes and some bar tape. So the whole bill came to £340.42. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to you guys in the comments. If you like this sort of content, please think about subscribing to the channel. Get your comments down below. I look forward to reading them, and I'll see you on the next one. Take it easy.